The 16-inch MacBook Pro is finally here, and I have to say, I'm surprised. In a good way. Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about everything that's new with the MacBook Pro. Then we're also going to go through the pricing and options that are available on this MacBook Pro and talk about which is the best value and how this fits into the Apple lineup going forward into 2020. Now, before we start talking about everything that's new, I've already placed my order for my 16-inch MacBook Pro. It should be arriving sometime next week. So let me know down in the comments below what you think my specs and my configuration was. We're going to go through everything, but I'm not going to tell you which options I selected because I want you guys to figure that out. And if you get it right, I'll feature it in the next video with the actual 16-inch MacBook Pro in it. So leave that stuff down below, and let's move on and talk about everything that's new. And the most surprising thing that isn't new is the pricing. It's the same price as the 15-inch MacBook Pro, and in fact, Apple has now discontinued the 15-inch MacBook Pro. So it's really the end of an era, the beginning of a new one for sure, but the 15-inch MacBook Pro has been with us since 2006. And in those 13 years, it's come a long way, from the very first 32-bit Core Duos all the way up to 8-core i9s, tons of horsepower, and really crappy keyboards. It is gone but not forgotten, and let's usher in the new age, the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and let's talk about the new hardware. So, first of all, we have the display, the 16-inch 3072 by 1920 display. Now, we've known about this for quite a few months now, but we didn't know the exact size of the new 16-inch MacBook Pro. It's actually not a huge increase in screen size, but we are going to get more pixel density. So this is actually the first time that Apple has changed the resolution of their Pro displays since 2012 with the introduction of the Retina MacBook Pro. We've had 2880 by 1800 on a 15.4-inch display with about 220 pixels per inch for over 7 years now. And the bezels are also noticeably thinner than the 15-inch. It's not a huge amount thinner, it's not like this razor-thin Infinity Edge display, but it is noticeably thinner and it kind of modernizes the look and feel of the MacBook Pro. They're not reinventing the wheel here, the design is more or less the same, and I'll be honest, I don't really have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with the design, with the aesthetics of the MacBook Pro. However, while aesthetically it looks pretty much the same, there are some key improvements in the thermals and the keyboard. We'll start with the keyboard because it's all anyone's been able to talk about for the past 3 years. The keyboards suck. Granted, the 2019s aren't as bad as they used to be, but they're still not great, and we should be able to put that criticism to rest with a new 1mm scissor switch mechanism. And we're also going back to the old inverted T arrangement for the arrow keys. The 2016 MacBooks had this weird lopsided key style where the up and down keys were small and the left and right keys were super big, but now we're going back to the way it used to be back on the older Retinas. And then we have a new thermal architecture. It's got 28% more airflow and 35% more heatsink. Now, if you actually look at pictures of the internals, it doesn't look a whole lot different to me, but it's supposedly going to be a lot better and allows for up to 12 more watts of cooling than the previous generation. Now, considering that the CPU options haven't changed from the 2019 15-inch to the new 16-inch MacBook Pro, that should be pretty decent because I found that the cooling wasn't horrible on the 15-inch on the 2019 models. It wasn't thermal throttling, we were still getting some good turbo boosts, so if we're able to more effectively cool those same processors, we should be in a pretty good spot. Now, as far as the RAM and the storage options go, we do have some improvements to storage, which we'll talk about later. We can equip up to 8 terabytes of SSD. That's a ton. And we also have faster RAM, whereas the previous 2018 and 2019 15-inch MacBook Pros had 2400 MHz DDR4. We're now running 2666 like you would find in the Mac Mini. And the thing that I'm actually the most excited about is the new graphics options. We have 7nm GPUs finally. The MacBook Pro has been mired in Polaris since 2016, and you had to pay extra for Vega as recently as yesterday. So finally, we have much more powerful graphics. So with this larger display and new graphics, we do also have a larger 100 watt hour battery, which is supposedly going to give us up to 11 hours of battery life. I've been very satisfied with the battery life on my 15-inch MacBook Pros, so I would expect that this battery is going to be excellent. The other thing that should be pretty excellent is a new speaker design. Now, I had no problem with the sound quality on the previous 15-inch MacBook Pro. In fact, these MacBooks of this generation are really, really, really good. They sound amazing, better than any other laptop I've used, and supposedly the 16-inch is going to be even better. We have a new 6-speaker design with opposing woofers that should be able to cancel out rattle and vibrations, as well as new noise-canceling microphones to give better input sound. Okay, so now that we've gone over all of the new features, let's talk about the pricing. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the pricing hasn't changed. We have, for the first time in recent Apple history, significant improvements and no significant increase in price. It's mind-blowing. Obviously, the 16-inch MacBook Pro is not cheap, but it's actually fairly reasonably priced for Apple standards, so let's dive in on the website and take a look. So the pricing structure is the same, and the CPU structure is the same. So we're starting out with a 6-core i7, and then the higher tier model has an 8-core i9. And the base model is 2400 just like before, with the higher tier one at 2800 also just like before. So on the base model, we have new Radeon Pro 5300M graphics with 4 gigs of VRAM. Now these should be faster than the previous highest end graphics options, the Vega 20. So this is a pretty significant improvement. Now we do still have 16 gigabytes of RAM standard, but as you can see, it's a faster 2666 megahertz. And the biggest, most important thing that I think most people will notice is we now have 512 gigabytes as standard. It used to be 256 on the base, 512 on the higher tier, but we've now changed that finally to 512 on the base, and then the higher tier model comes with 1 terabyte as standard. I have been wanting Apple to do this for so long. I really thought back when this generation came out in 2016 that that's what was going to happen. It was going to be the 1 terabyte standard, and they didn't do it. And then they didn't do it in 2017 or 2018 or 2019. But now, finally, I guess it is still 2019, but at the very end of it, we finally have 1 terabyte as standard on the 15-inch MacBook Pro. Wait, I just said 15-inch. I gotta get used to this. 16. Hello. All right, so let's move over to the higher tier one. We have the same 2.3 gigahertz i9 that we had before, but now, of course, we have these new graphics options, the 5500M with 4 gigs of VRAM, still 16 gigs of RAM, and of course, that 1 terabyte SSD. All right, so let's hop in and start configuring this. And I'm actually gonna hop in on the lower tier because unlike before where certain options were only available on the higher tier, namely the Vega graphics, we can actually choose all the options just by going into the base model. So let's go through and max this thing out. We have the option of adding an 8-core i9 just like before. Now we have up to 64 gigs of RAM. That's $800. It's really expensive. But we also have these 2 graphics options. So the 5500M is the same thing that comes standard on the higher tier model. And then you can get that same 5500M with 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and that's an extra $100 over the standard 5500M. Now, I'm not sure if there's any other differences between the actual GPU, but I'm pretty sure it's just the VRAM. So moving down to the storage, you can see we can go all the way up to 8 terabytes, which is bonkers. And the most expensive MacBook Pro is $6,100. Now, that's by no means inexpensive, but I'll be honest, I was expecting it to be pushing 10. So $6,000 is relatively tame. All right, but in all seriousness, I don't think most people are going to be ordering this MacBook Pro with 8 terabytes of SSD. So let's go ahead and scale it back to something a little bit more reasonable. I think for most people, 1 terabyte is probably a good way to go. We could probably leave it with 4 gigabytes of VRAM unless you really need that 8, and it's only $100 extra, but we'll scale it back. We'll scale it back to the 32 gigs of RAM, and we're looking at $3,400. Now, the only thing that I would do is this 8-core, the 2.4 gigahertz 8-core processor is really not necessary. I have it on my 2019 MacBook Pro that I got for free from Apple. So what I would do is stick with the 2.3 on the higher tier model. Go ahead and up the RAM to 32. You can choose the graphics or not. Keep it to 1 terabyte. And we're looking at $3,200. I really don't want to be that guy who's saying that $3,200 is cheap, but I really thought it was going to be more expensive. I thought that this thing was going to start at $3,200. So the fact that we're able to get all of these options, 32 gigs of RAM, Core i9s, much faster graphics. We still don't know just how fast. 1 terabyte SSD, really fast SSD, $3,200? Was not expecting that. So there you have it, the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now, all in all, today was a very good day. This was definitely surprising to see these upgrades, pretty significant upgrades, coming in at the same price point with relatively modest upgrade prices. Those graphics are only $100 extra, stuff like that. I was really not expecting that. It's definitely a weird situation that we're in, and it's very unlike Apple. And the other thing that's very weird is they haven't touched the 13-inch. So we've got this weird disjunction between the two models that they're not getting updated at the same time now, which is very odd. Now, one thing that I could see coming next year, if they're not going to do a redesign, which I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, given that the design, I don't know really what you would change. It would mainly just be cosmetic now that we've got the things that we wanted, like the new keyboard and thermals. But if there is going to be a new MacBook Pro next year, which obviously there will be, what I could see happening is a 14-inch MacBook Pro, sort of giving the same treatment to the 13-inch with the new keyboard and thermals, slightly larger display, and then that would kind of give some more differentiation between the MacBook Air and the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which right now are pretty similar. Okay, so I've been talking for long enough. I have another video coming out later this week on the 17-inch MacBook Pro, which I made before all of this happened, so hopefully that video doesn't look dated immediately. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you can catch that. As usual, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below what configuration you think I went for. And as usual, don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LukeMiani. Join my subreddit, which is linked down in the description below. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video.